Recording in progress. And screen is shared. Okay, I think that now you all guys see my screen. Okay, we are going to start. Thank you all for attending. I think that there are one or two of you that never attended before. Maybe I'm mistaken. But some of you, this might be their first session. Just a quick intro for this club. It's a club related to professional development, self-improvement, career growth. So it's a club in the American corner, Tunis and American corner SUS, that is happening every week on a Saturday. And each week we address a specific topic that is talking about professional growth, topic related to soft skills. We talked about leadership. We talked about communication skills, if I'm not. No, I don't think that we talked about communication skills yet. We talked about leadership. We talked about, how to set up a LinkedIn profile, how to write CV, how to nail it during your interview. So basically, the purpose of this club is to provide you with the tools that you need, especially um, um, after university time, because that's when you will need these tools to get a job and to start your professional career. As I mentioned, each time we have specific topic that we talk about it. Till now and for the next few weeks, this club will be and will remain remote because I'm currently based in Washington, D.C. But I will be back in Tunisia, and I will be basically based in Tunisia starting from October for professional purposes. And this club will shift to be in person. So when I will be back, the structure of the club is going to be different. And it's something that I'm already discussing with Rada and with Julian. Because since this is remote, the way that we are doing the presentations and the sessions, it is mostly theoretical. So I am sharing with you ideas, I am sharing with you theories, I'm sharing with you guidelines on specific skills and on specific professional development capabilities, how to develop it, theoretically speaking. But you know that there is the theory and there is the practice, and they are a bit different. When we will start having this club in person, in Tunis for sure, in Sousse, I'd say hopefully slash for sure as well, we will be having this club, and the structure will be basically 45 minutes we will do theories, and 45 minutes we will do hands-on activities, practicalities, case studies. So you will basically experiencing specific case studies where they help you to develop, or where they give you like practical ideas how to develop specific skills. Let's say, for instance, if we have creative problem solving and decision making session in Tunisia. So we will have 45 minutes where we are going to have a session talking about the guidelines, the theories, how to make a decision, how to solve a problem, what do you need exactly. After that theory, we will be working on groups on a specific case study of a specific problem where you will have time to apply the theory to that case study so you can experience firsthand how you can come up with a solution to the problem and how you can make a decision using the theory. So this is basically the structure. I'm still working on a proposal that I will submit to Jillian and Rada, and we will be addressing the skills that we already talked about it, but there will be way more intellectual skills that we will be working on, but also beyond that, there is other important things that we will be discussing beside the intellectual skills. So this is in a nutshell the club, where we are right now, and what we want to do for the next month. And of course, if you have any questions regarding the club, regarding the future of the club, how we're gonna do it, where we're gonna do it, maybe the time, etc., etc., feel free to drop a message. Feel free to drop a message in the chat box, and later we'll answer your questions. Let's now dive in to our topic of today. So the topic of today is creative problem solving and decision making. Problem solving and decision making in this specific session, they will be intertwined. So we will be talking on problem solving, and at the same time how to make a decision to choose the best option for a problem that you have. Because usually problem solving and decision making, they are two separate sessions, but I wanted to merge them together. And I want to stress on the fact that here, when we will be talking about decision making, we are talking in the context of a solution for the problems, or a solution for problems, or a solution for a problem. So this is the context for which we are going to talk about decision making. And you will see later, we will see how at the end of the presentation, there is a slide on how to choose the best solution. When we're talking about choosing the best solution, that's when we're talking about making the decision about what's the best solution. So this is the context of decision making. There will be a session hopefully in the future where it is focusing only about decision making. And when we talk about decision making, we do not necessarily talking about solution for problems or problem solving. We can make decisions on different contexts. Like, for example, sometimes you need to make a decision about a professional career. Sometimes you have to make a decision about how to, I don't know, like, for example, from high school, what to choose to study in university. Sometimes for professionals, you have to make a decision about someone to recruit, etc., etc. All these, I wouldn't really say that they are problems, but at the same time, when we talk about solutions for problem and problem solving, we also need to talk about decision. The approach, they are similar, except that when we're talking about problems, we need to dive deeper. We need to use more tools. And this is something that we will discuss later, just to make it clear in terms of expectation for this presentation. The agenda is short. We are going to have 4 main points that we are going to discuss. And the first thing that we are going to talk about it is critical thinking. And critical thinking here, it is really important when it comes to how to make the best decision, because there are people that sometimes, for instance, they make a decision based on information or based on data, but sometimes information and data, it is not enough for you to make a decision. There are other things that you have to take into consideration so you can make a decision. That's why I want to talk about critical thinking. We will define critical thinking, and there is only 2 things that I am going to address when it comes to critical thinking. And you will see there are 2 important things that you have to take into consideration when it comes to whenever you have a problem. These 2 things you have to take into consideration so later you can make a decision. And this is something that we will discuss in the first slide. The second slide, we were going to talk about how to identify the real problem. So the first slide, we were talking about critical thinking, how you need to approach, how you need to think, and how you need to address a problem, but also taking into consideration that you have to make specific decision when it comes to that specific problem in choosing a solution. But then we will talk about how to identify the problem, then how to generate possible solutions for a problem. So you have a problem, then how to generate solutions, and then eventually how to select the best solution from that problem. Now, before to start, there is one important information that I need to share with you, is that this presentation is in a professional context. So when we talk about solution for a problem here, we are talking mostly about professional context. However, we can still use the theories and the approach that I'm going to share with you at a personal level as well, because I know sometimes we have problems at a personal level, but still you can use the approach, the same approach, even though sometimes the the context of personal problems, life problems, it might be a little bit different from the professional problems, because there are different elements that you need to consider. Um, so yeah, let's start with the first point that we are going to talk about, it critical thinking and its importance when it comes to decision making. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is basically a kind of thinking in which you question, you analyze, you interpret, and evaluate, and also make a judgment about a problem, about something, about someone. So critical thinking, remember the last sessions that we had, I told you guys about the I side and the mind side. So basically the I side and the mind side, for people who did not attend before, it's when you see something or you see a specific situation, and then you either look at it with your brain or look at it with your eyes. So what do I mean, look at it with your brain and look at it with your eyes? You have a specific situation, and this is also applies for a problem. So when I'm saying this, when I'm saying situation, also think of it as a problem as well. So when you have a problem, if you are a critical thinker, if you are a critical thinker, you have a situation, you have a problem, you have to take one step back. You have to ask questions about that situation. You have to analyze that situation. You have to evaluate that situation. You have to interpret that situation, and then you make a judgment. That's when you are thinking with your mind, and that's what we call the mind side. The eye side is basically you see situations, wherever you see in that specific situation, based on that, you make your decision. You don't ask questions, you don't do analysis, you don't do evaluation, nothing. You saw that, and boom, that's it. I'm not like I made a decision already, like what's that? I made a decision what I'm gonna do, etc., etc. This is what we call normal thinking. And I want you here to focus about critical thinking, because the first and most important elements when it comes to problem solving, whenever you have a problem, and this is really important, and this is the cream of the presentation, and this is how you start your problem solving journey on the right foot, you have to be a critical thinker. A critical thinker, it's when you have a problem, you have to ask many questions, you have to do analysis, you have to have an evaluation, and you have to do your own interpretation. And this is basically what's critical thinking. You should not, by any means, you have a problem and then you go ahead straight away, you make a decision. For instance, if you are a boss in a company, okay, and then you see someone who overreacted during a meeting. You are having a meeting with your team, and there is someone who did overreact, okay? And as a boss, you have to take actions. If you go ahead and send a warning to that person because he or she did overreact during the meeting, because you are the boss and you need to take action, that means that you did not ask questions. You did not ask why this happened, why that person overreacted. You did not analyze that situation. You did not do an evaluation for that situation, and you did not end up coming up with interpretation. All what you did is that you were there, you did see the staff overreacting, and based on what you saw, you made a decision. So that would make you someone who's just a normal thinker, not a critical thinker. And that's make you someone who took a decision based on the eye side, not a decision based on the mind side. So this is something important when it comes to decision making. To solve a problem, you have to be a critical thinker. I hope that this is clear on the definition for critical thinking. Now, remember when I told you there are two main things that we're going to talk about it here? These two things, they affect your decision making even when you are a critical thinker. Even when you are a critical thinker who asks questions, who does analysis, etc., etc. Say that you reach the point that you think with your mind side. That's amazing. You became a critical thinker. However, there are two important elements that would either make you a good critical thinker or a bad critical thinker. Matter of fact, these two elements are the number one elements that affect your judgment. So element number one is the biases. So the bias is basically and simply a strong preconceived notion of someone or something based on past experience or information, based on past experience or information, and it affects your ability to critically engage with the problem or others. So basically, a bias is when you have already a preconceived idea about something, okay? And based on that, you go ahead and make a judgment. And this affects your decision making. This affects your decision making even if you are a critical thinker. Let me give you an example. So say that you are a boss again. You have a team of two individuals working with you. Someone is from Japan. Someone else is from a country, let's call it X. Or maybe, okay, someone from, for example, let's say Tunisia, because we are from Tunisia. Okay. Now you gave them a job that they need to get done for in specific deadline. When you gave them a job, you did not receive that work or that report. You asked them for a report. You did not receive it on the right time. You receive it after. You are so upset as a boss. You need to make a decision, and you need to solve the problem, whatever was the issue, for that report to be delayed. Now, as a boss, your preconceived notion or your strong belief is that Japanese, they are hard workers. They are hardworking, they do a great job, they're always punctual, they're on time. The Tunisian, they are not. They are not punctual, they do not do a good job. And this is an example, guys. I know that 95% of us, they're amazing at what they do when they focus on what they're doing. But you think that the Tunisian, the preconceived notion is that the Tunisian, they are lazy, they don't do a good job, they don't meet deadline, etc., etc. So when you will be sitting down with them to discuss what was the issue, you have already a preconceived notion in your mind, and you're already starting the meeting with a specific belief that the Japanese is not the one who's wrong, the Tunisian is something wrong, is wrong. The Tunisian, the issues come from Tunisia. That is what we call the bias. And that what affects your decision making. And that is something that we need to be aware of when we start making decisions. Sometimes we have a preconceived notion that maybe we cannot get rid of it, but we need to be aware of it, which means whenever you have a problem and whenever you want to solve that problem and whenever you want to make a decision about that problem, it's true you have to be a critical thinker, but you have to be aware of all the biases that you have in mind before to start thinking about a solution. I'm not going to say get rid of your biases, but be aware of them. So if you are the boss, for example, and you're going to sit down and you're going to maybe start not blaming, but like looking at them like the Tunisian is wrong, at least as a boss, you have to be aware of that bias. And when you are aware of that bias, the questions might be different. Your analysis of the system, of the issue is going to be different. Your interpretation is going to be different just because you were aware of this bias. So even the question that you would ask the Tunisian and Japanese might be a little bit different in a positive way, right? And that's how, if you are aware of it, and then you start asking the right question, just to try and eliminate the bias from the conversation, because you only eliminate the bias when you are aware of it. That's when you will start having accurate information, accurate data, and that's how you make right decision at the end. So this is the bias, and this is one element that can make and affect your decision making, and that's really an obstacle when it comes to critical thinking / decision making. This is the number one element that affects your decision making and your critical thinking skills. Number two element is asking questions. So I want to stress on this. I mentioned it in the intro and I mentioned again, guys, there is no progress without asking questions. I do not care how silly you might think your question is. I do not care whether you are timid, whether you are ashamed, whether you think your question is not relevant. Ask your questions. This is really, really, really important. I strongly believe, I think that, one day I will have like a whole workshop about asking questions. I truly believe that one day I'm going to do that. How to ask questions. Matter of fact, I think let's do it. When I come back to Tunisia, let's have a workshop about how to ask questions and how to ask the right question and how to ask the wrong question. It is fine. It is not a problem. Because by asking questions, you get information, and information are data. And data, it's what governs the world right now. If you ask anyone in the world right now, the AI, artificial intelligence, is what controlling the world. What's the artificial intelligence? It's just set of data. So this is something really important. This is what you guys need to understand. Asking question gives you information, and asking question gives you that information, and this information would help you to progress. So this is really, really important. And now I want you to think of asking questions from a critical thinking point of view and a decision-making point of view, right? So when you ask question, you will have as many information as possible. When you have as many information as possible, you will be able to do your analysis. When you will able to do your analysis about a situation, you will do the right interpretation. Sorry. When you do the right interpretation, you will definitely make the right decisions. So this is really important. And also, you have to engage staff with you as well. So basically, asking questions is an essential tool to become critical thinker and to make sure others are engaged as well. So this is something also important, is that we will discuss it later, is when it comes to problem solving, when it comes also to decision making, it is really important to engage other. Engaging other is your biggest asset when it comes to making decisions. And we will discuss it later. And how you engage other is by asking questions. So it's really important that you guys ask questions, because when you ask questions, that will help you to make a right decision. When you do not ask question, you don't have all the data, you don't have all the information, so you cannot make the right decision and you cannot solve your problem. So I want you also always to remember these two things. The bias, you have to be aware of the bias, and questions, you have to make sure that you ask questions. And these are two things that is what I call them the make or break of critical thinker. And why I'm focusing on critical thinking and critical thinker, because simply critical thinking is what is going to help you the right decision when it comes to the solutions to your problem. So as you will see later, we have identifying the problem, we have figuring out what are the solutions, and you have selecting the best solutions. But I wanted to start with critical thinking because critical thinking, it is something really, really important and something that I'll keep mentioning, and you will hear me saying critical thinking at all stages of the presentation. For me, if I sit in an interview, if I am interviewing someone and someone actually sitting, not me, or even me, if I sit in an interview and they ask me about problem solving, you have to mention critical thinking in your answer. If I am interviewing someone and I ask someone about problem solving, if he answers me with a language that I do not understand and he puts the word critical thinking in the answer, even though I don't understand anything of what he's saying, if he puts or she puts critical thinking in her answer, this is the answer that I'm looking for. This is the answer that I'm looking for. Because when you have a problem, and you would see also there are other things like emotions that control our decision making, but when you have a problem, you have to think about it critically. You have to think about it using the mind side. And I know that I've been repeating this again and again and again, but this is the best way for you to make the best decision for your problem. And let me tell you this specifically, it helps in your professional life, but also in your personal life as well. So this is critical thinking in decision making. And if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box or I'll answer them later. I mean, of course, unmute yourself and ask it later. I don't know the answer. Thank you, guys. Now let's move on to identifying the real problem. So when you have a problem, the first thing that we want to do is to identify the real problem, okay? And what do I mean by that? Because some of you might say, and let me go back to the situation where you are a boss and someone in the room overreacted. Some of you, they would say that my real problem is that that staff overreacted in the room. This is completely wrong. This is not the real problem. And this is a normal thinking type of mind. You saw that, you thought that this is the problem, I am gonna address the problem, and you will be addressing like in a shallow way. And you will see later, there is a code that I'm gonna share with you regarding if you address a problem in a shallow way, it will come back and bite you. And we will see it later, we will discuss it later. That's not your real problem. Your real problem is that you have to find the cause of that overreaction. Why did that happened? Okay, so this is just an example, and we'll see later another example that will make it easy for you. So identify the real problem is simply by finding the right cause. Your problem, it's not what you're seeing, but it's more what's the cause of what you're seeing. What's the cause of what you're seeing, or what's the cause of the issue or the problem that you have on the table. You have to find out what is it exactly. That's why you have to list the possible causes, and we will discuss how we can list the possible causes. Then you have to determine the specific cause, because sometimes you have like all the possible causes, but they are just a probability. They are possible causes. There are one or two that they would be like the main cause, and then you tackle it or you attack by fixing the problem. Let me share with you a couple of rules on how you can find the root or the main cause of a problem. Okay? There is the first rule, which is you have to ask the why, the 5 whys. And here, when I say the 5 whys, it means ask 5 consecutive whys. So there is an example, I'll share it now, but let me take one step back on the example of your boss and someone in the room overreacted in a meeting. So your question, you have to ask, why did that staff overreacted? This is the number one question of, this is not your number one why. The number, like, and then the answer for that would be because he or she was upset. You ask the second why that person was upset. Because he or she did not get the salary raise that he or she asked for. Then you ask your third why he did not get the salary that he asked for. Because his evaluation was not his performance, his yearly or her yearly performance evaluation was not up to, like, the expectation of his or her boss. And then you have your main cause of the issue is that the performance of that person was not good enough to get the salary raise. Then you attack and you fix your problem. Your problem is that the performance of that person was not good. And that what led him to be upset. And that what led them to overreact during a meeting. Okay, this is a simple example that I'm giving you guys to understand the process. So even when you have a problem in your professional, and again, even in your personal life, you can try it. You ask the 5 whys, because the 5 whys you have a main problem, and then you have a sub problem, and then a sub problem, and then sub problem, and then until you reach a specific problem that you can address, and then you address the root of the cause or the main cause, and then you eradicate the whole problem. So basically, we found out that the problem is the performance of the person. Now you have to come up with a creative solution. The creative solution, for instance, you can sit down with a person, tell them, okay, this year you didn't get salary raise. Next year, if you want to get a salary raise, here is exactly what you want to do, what you should do. Okay, you should submit report on time. You should maybe improve your communication. You should maybe share more emails, share or something like that. And that way you address the main cause of the problem. Okay. Again, this is it's a really simple way to explain how to use the 5 whys. Let's go through another pretty simple example. Okay. And this is basically how to ask the 5 consecutive whys. Okay, you have the problem, you want to find the root cause so you can address it later on, which is you run through a red light. Why? That's the problem. Your problem is that you run through the red light, right? And say that you are driving and you have your partner with you have your wife or your husband, right? And then, or maybe you are sitting in the passenger seat and you have a friend with you who ran through a red light. And that's for you a problem, right? But also you need to understand why this happened. Okay? And then if you ask all the whys, you will find that sometimes the root cause is something that you did not expect at all. Okay? For example, you ran through a red light. The first question that you have to ask why, that they will tell you because we are late for work. Yes, but ask again why you're late for work. Wake up late, and then alarm didn't work, exhausted battery, and I forgot to check it. See, so that's how you actually subdivide and subcategorize your problem to sub problems by asking multiple whys, 5 whys. Now, the rule number 2 on how to identify a problem, that is what we call the Kepner-Trago process. And the Kepner-Trago process, it's pretty simple method that is subdivided to 5 elements. Okay, so it's not just identifying the problem and that's it, but you have a situation. You have to analyze the situation, and when I say situation, I say a problem. But at the same time, you have to evaluate the possible solutions, which is something that we will see later. You have also to consider the solutions risk. So basically, you will have solutions. You have a set of possible solutions, as I mentioned previously. Sorry, guys. But then these solutions, each one of them will come with risks. So you never believe, guys, that you have a problem. You have a list of solutions that you thought of, and that's it. No. All these solutions, you have to think of what's the risk of the solution? What's the value of the solution? Again, it's something that we'll discuss later. But because it's Kepner and Trago process contains basically everything when it comes to problem solving, it's really important at least to lay the ground so later we can address it in depth. You consider the solutions risk, but also it's really important to define the problem. And what I mean by defining the problem is that you have to find the root cause of the problem, not what you see, but rather when you ask the 5 whys, for instance, so you will know what's the main cause exactly. So this is the rule number 2, and this is one way how you can identify the real problem. So the rule number 3, which is also really important, guys, is that you have to look at the whole system. What do I mean? But looking at the whole system is that sometimes, and this is a quote from a really interesting book that I highly recommend that you guys read, when sometimes you fix something, but it will somehow come back and bite you. Sorry, there is and bite you that is missing. So basically, that's when you solve like the problem at shallow level. Okay, so again, I will go back to my simple example of you are a boss and you have a staff who overreacted in a meeting room. So when you saw that happened, you didn't do any analysis. You did not use your critical thinking mind. You went ahead and sent a warning to the staff. So here, you did not look at the whole system that we were discussing. You did not ask the questions. You did not do the analysis. You did not sit and talk with the staff. You did not do anything. You saw something. You took action and you sent a warning. Did you solve the problem? You did not solve the problem. You made it even worse because, first of all, that staff, he didn't get what he wanted. He probably didn't understand why he didn't get what he wanted. In our case, we said maybe salary raise, and he still get a warning. Do you think that this staff will not overreact again in a meeting? Of course, he or she will. So that's why here we're talking, Edward Tanner said, you fix something, but it will somehow come back and bite you if you fix it in a shallow way. And that would give you what we call illusion of control. So basically, if I send a warning to that staff, I think that I controlled the problem, but it's just illusion because I did not control that problem. I made it worse because I did not look at the whole system. So when you guys have a problem, look at the whole system. Look at all the elements. Ask your 5 whys. Do your list of solutions. Do the risk of each solution and then make a decision. And that's how you look at the whole system. There is one thing that I highly recommend. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in if I'm gonna mention it in this presentation or not, is that something that I really like, pen and paper. Some of you might find this weird, but it's the most efficient way to brainstorm with yourself. You know, I like to draw figures on a piece of paper. I like to draw charts, do like, matrix, do some analysis with a pen and paper. So I highly recommend whenever you guys, for instance, if you do your 5 whys, take a pen, take a piece of paper, and write everything down. Writing everything down helps you to reflect. That's why when we were kids and even now, you see, we like our parents or our teachers, they used to tell us like, have an agenda, write things down, etc., etc. Writing helps you to remember, helps you to reflect, and helps you also to make the right decision, and sometimes to even look at a whole system. So use a pen and paper and do everything on a piece of paper. This is really important. This is really useful, and it has been useful at least for me, and I highly recommend to everyone. So whatever I'm going through here, wherever theories I'm sharing, wherever guidelines I'm sharing, wherever approach that I'm sharing, please guys, whenever you are going to use those, don't just use them while use them just in your mind, but write them down. It doesn't take that much. It's just like, 15 minutes. Okay, I have a problem X. Question why X happened? Because of this and this and that. Question 2, why this and this and that happened? Because, like XYZ. Why XYZ happened? Write everything down. So this is really important, and this really helps. This is my recommendation for you. I'm not sure if I mentioned this at further stage of the presentation, but at least I mentioned it now, just in case I forgot it. Now, let's talk about generating possible solutions. So say that you have a problem, say that, put together your 5 whys, say that you looked at the bigger picture, you understood what's the issue exactly. How do you possibly can make a list of possible solutions to that problem? Okay, so before going to step 1, let me give you step 0. Okay, step 0 is basically you with yourself. You sit down, again, piece of paper and a pen, and write down what do you think are the best solutions. So my problem is that I did not get that job. Okay, I know that many of you might have that problem of applying but not getting those jobs, conducting interviews, etc., etc. So my problem number 1 is that I did not get a job. You go through asking your 5 whys, why I did not get a job. And after that, maybe you can try and look at the bigger picture, not only why I didn't get a job and that's it, or maybe why you didn't get a job, I don't know. You can look at the bigger picture of you think that, for example, your problem is that you need to change your CV, but it might be deeper than that. So that's how you look at the whole system, and that's how you dig deeper on why you think that there is an issue that you are not getting those jobs. And that's when also you sit down and you write all the solutions that you think of. I am not getting a job, and here is some solutions that can happen. Maybe study something else, maybe get another degree, maybe applying abroad, maybe, there are many solutions. And there is something really important that I will let you a later stage. These solutions, as I mentioned before, there are risks associated to it, but they are really tightly linked to your, for instance, 5 whys. Because 5 whys, for each why, for example, you have to find a specific solution, right? Or also there is what we call a solution tree, and I'll state it later. So let's just like take it easy, and then I'll tell you exactly what I mean, but what I just said in terms of the solutions. So the step number 0, as I said, you with yourself write down what are the solutions to your problem. Step number 1 is you have to gather ideas through brainstorming. Include all idea, gather what we call data. Data is really important. Gather ideas through brainstorming. Brainstorming, for instance, if you have other friends who are not getting jobs, like sit down together and guys think what are the possible solutions for us to get jobs, right? Even though here I prefer talking about like one common problem rather than like different problems. So, or for instance, if you have someone that you consider as a mentor, or maybe two or three you consider as a mentor, you can meet with them and then you can gather some information. You can tell them about what happened exactly, gather some information to brainstorm what are the issues exactly, why we are not getting the jobs, and what are the possible solutions. Try to accept all the solutions possible. Try to be diplomatic, because some of the mentors, they will probably tell you maybe it's time for you to study something else and to go to university again. For you, it might sound a little bit silly, but it's fine. Consider it. Any information or any data or any opinion or any suggestion, please take it, write it down, even if you think that is silly. There is nothing silly, because sometimes it might turn out to be the best option. So this is really important when it comes to gathering ideas through brainstorming. Try to brainstorm in a group. As I said, for instance, when you have a problem of not getting a job, maybe, like your father, he has some knowledge, maybe you have mentors, like brainstorm together about what are possible solutions for me to get a job. So this is step number one. So step number two, draw what I call a mind maps. So a mind maps is basically you have to start with a clear problem statement in the center. And then after that, you have to create main idea branches and sub branches with related concepts and connect ideas with lines. So you have a specific problem, okay? And then you have to basically draw a mind map about, I have a problem, maybe what are the issues, maybe what are the solutions, who can be involved, what are the things that need to be done, what are the things that can be improved, what are the things that can affect my decision making, am I a critical thinker or not, what is affecting my critical thinking. So the draw mind map is basically all what we've been discussing right now. You put everything in mind map, you put everything on a map where you have the problem in the center and you have all the elements that we've been discussing and a lot of other elements that probably you will be reading on books, you will be attending other workshops, and they will provide you with other idea. And that's when you draw a mind map. Please do not draw the mind maps in your mind again. Draw it on a piece of paper and a pen. Put all the elements and all the problem, try to interconnect them, because that would give you what we call clarity. And through clarity, you can make a good decision. So this is step number two that I really suggest for you guys, because this step will provide you with possible solutions, because you have the problem clearly states what are the elements that needs to be considered, what are the main issues, what are the causes, what are the people that might be involved. That mind map will later help you, even when you are sitting by yourself, to make a clear list of solutions that will choose from it later the best options to your problem. Step number three, which is what I really, really like, which is decision tree. I was thinking about whether I include this in the next slide or in this slide, but I told myself, let me put it in the possible solution. And here is exactly why. A decision tree is simply all the solutions that you have, because the solutions that you have, later you have to make a decision about each solution. what is going to happen, what is going to be the outcome from this solution. Okay, sorry. And then, for example, take solution number one. If I do this, what is going to happen? Okay, because sometimes you have, I think it's better if I give an example. Keeping it easy again, talking about like you are a boss and you have a staff that overreacted. Okay, so basically, if you are a boss and you have a staff overreacted, so the solution for you maybe is to, as I said, that's, you know, say that you used your eyesight. Your solution is to send a warning email. Now I want you to reflect before sending a warning email. If this is my solution, if this is what I'm gonna do, what is gonna happen? If this is what I'm not gonna do, what is gonna happen? So basically, you have staff who overreacted. You're gonna send a warning email. If I send a warning email, the staff will be upset. If the staff will be upset, he will cause more harms during meetings. If I do not send the email, you have two other options. Either I sit with the staff and discuss what's the issue, or I completely ignore it, and then the staff will continue with the same behavior. If the staff continue with the same behavior, what is going to happen? If I address the issue with the staff, what is going to happen? If he's going to accept, how are we going to, for example, if he's going to accept, or if he's going to accept the feedback, or if I listen from him, or each one, where is going to lead exactly. So you draw the decision map and your decision tree, and then that decision will lead you to a specific outcome. And then that outcome later, based on that, you can either decide this is the solution that I want, or this is the solution that I don't want. Because some outcome you will not be happy with, so you can avoid it, but some outcome you will be happy with, so you can follow that solution. So this is really important. So as I mentioned here, if you do this, these several things might happen. You have to make sure that for each outcome, you have to put probabilities and values. So for the outcome, what is the value from this outcome? Is that outcome will solve my problem or not? If that outcome will affect the team, because sometimes your outcome will solve your problem, but will affect your team in a bad way. So it doesn't have value. So it's really important. Once you have a solution, you have to make a decision tree. Decision tree is the solution. If I decide that I'm gonna go with that solution, what's going to happen exactly? And then these outcomes, what are the values of each outcome? So this is really important. Now, just another important thing to remind you guys, it is always best to do this with a group. So at a personal level, I already mentioned an example. If you're not getting a job, it can be like, you know, your father, your mother, your brother, your mentors, etc., etc. But when it comes to professional setup, you can use your colleagues, you can use your teammates, you can use your bosses, etc., etc. This is how always best to use other and to brainstorm together. So this is really important. Now, selecting the best solution, which is the final slide of our presentation. I am gonna share with you 6 important elements that you need to consider. I am sorry to disappoint you guys, but there is no one solution, or there is no one answer to, if you ask me, how do I select the best solution to a problem? I'm not going to give you one theory or one example or one answer. No. I'm going to give you multiple elements that you need to consider. These elements that you need to consider is really important so you can make the best decision of selecting the best solution. So you will see here also there are things that we already discussed about, but it's really important for you to remember, guys. So first thing is you have to examine your options. Again, you have to list all the options in a chart. So now say that you have all the solutions, you have all the outcomes, put these outcomes in a chart and put what are the pros and what are the cons and what are the advantages and what are the values. The pros and cons is like, what's the positive about this? What's the negative about this solution and its outcome? So you have to put them in a chart and put the pros and cons, what are the advantages and the values, and then you will have a clear idea about what is good about it, what is bad about it, whether I can choose the solution or not. Using risk analysis, I love using risk analysis. During my job, we use a lot of risk analysis during project management, especially when we have a new project that is going to be implemented, we use risk analysis. So risk analysis is basically for each option or each solution, you have to do a risk analysis. If I'm gonna take this decision, what are the risks? And this will take me again to the decision tree or the decision tree or the solution tree or the decision-making tree. So you have the solution. If I take the solution, what are the risks? If I do not take that solution, what are the risks? So the risk analysis comes toe to toe and is really heavily linked to the decision tree. So again, you have a solution, you're gonna make a decision with the solution, what are the risks? Am I gonna take risk? Is it going to be making things worse? So this is what I mean by risk analysis. And as I mentioned previously, this will be helpful mostly in your professional setup, but I want you guys also, in terms of risk analysis, even in the teeniest, tiniest problems in your life, in your personal life, especially when it comes to risk analysis. If I am gonna do this, what are the risks? I do not want you to think if I am going to do this, what are the rewards? I want you to think, to be critical thinker. If I am going to do this, what are the risks? Before even thinking about what are the rewards. Consider the risks before even the rewards. If, for example, I am going to, I don't know, if I am going to make that phone call, I don't know what that phone call is about. I want you to look at the risks before even looking at the rewards. And this will help you in the decision making. But I also want you to understand that sometimes the risks are more rewarding. So what I mean here is that sometimes when you take the risk, this is not a bad thing. So when you are having a decision to make and you think about the reward and you think about the risks, it doesn't mean that you have to drop the risks and go with the reward. No, because sometimes the risks is worth it. And this, if there are some of you who are trader or they are trading in the stock market, they know this concept of risk analysis. In the stock market, there is a really famous quote that says, the higher the risks, the higher the rewards. And basically in the stock market, sometimes that's where you should make decisions, right? I know it's not related to solving a problem, but sometimes it applies as well. Sometimes the market is down and the traders, they make a decision to enter the market by buying millions of dollars of shares or even hundreds of dollars of shares. Let's not talk about millions of dollars, okay? And when they enter a market, they're taking risks because even if the market is down, them making a decision of entering the market when it's down, it doesn't guarantee that they will get a reward, because the market might go further down and they will be losing money. But also the market might also go up and they will be making money. This is not gambling, but this is all studied and analyzed. So this is what they do. And this is what you also need to do as well, is that when you have a decision to make, what are the risks? Analyze the risks, try to study the risks, try to do the interpretation of what are the risks, whether the risks are rewarding or not. So this is mostly, I know I gave an example at a personal level, but also professional level, it helps as well. And this, if any of you guys are high school students who are going to decide what is going to be their university studies afterward, that's a huge decision where I highly recommend that you guys take your time, sit down, take a piece of paper, do your analysis of the problem, do your analysis of the risks, what are the rewards, etc., etc. Do a brainstorming. You can like discuss with your friends, discuss with your professors, but it's really, really important. You have to study the risks. But if the risks, there is some rewards like behind the risks, it's fine by me to take that risk. But it's really important for you to sit down, take a piece of paper, and write that down. Now, there is what we call the wisdom of the crowd, which I mentioned before. The more people you ask, the more accurate your answer will be. Do not be shy. Do not let your ego control you when it comes to working with the crowd, asking other people, because sometimes I know that our ego controls us. Okay, like I do not answer. I want to ask that person. I know better than that person. I do not want to ask that person. I know better than that person. I do not want to include that person in my brainstorming. This is wrong, because sometimes the person that you are ignoring might be more knowledgeable on that specific problem that you want to address. So the more people you ask, the more accurate your answer will be. The wisdom of a crowd, include the crowd, include the people. There is what we call also the reversal theory. The reversal theory, it's pretty simple. If I select this option, what is the worst that can happen? It's a little bit similar to the risk analysis as well. But the reversal theory is basically, if I select, so if I have a decision to make about specific solution, and I see what are the risks, and I see what are the rewards, okay? And I want to go with the rewards, for instance. Even the rewards that you are going to go with, even like the positive things that you think they are there, sometimes you have like a possibility of something bad that might happen. I need you to think of it. Again, it's something similar to the risks, but here I want you more to focus on choosing that best option because you think that that option is rewarding or that solution is rewarding. That reward, what do you think the worst that can come of that reward? So this is how you should think of it. Now, two last thing, and this is how I'm gonna wrap up my presentation. Whether you are a critical thinker, whether you are the finest critical thinker of the world, whether you are the finest problem solver of the world, whether you are the finest decision maker of the world, always take your time. Whenever you have time to make a decision, I want you to take every single minute of that time to make a decision. Because the more time you have, the more time you can reflect, the more idea that you can come up, the more data you might have, the more information you might gather. Do not take a decision right away. Take your time. Whenever you have the possibility to take your time, guys, take your time. This is really important. Now, the last thing, and also the most important thing, and it's a little bit related to take your time, I want you guys to always use the logic and creativity, never your emotions. Sometimes we make decisions based on our emotions, and I'm sorry to let you guys know, is that the biggest regrets are the decisions made based on emotions. And in here, I want to focus also, like, you know, on a professional level, because sometimes on a professional level as well, we make decision based on our emotions. So never make a decision based on your emotions. always use your analytical skills, your critical thinking, use the logic, but also your creativity. There is sometimes, mainstream thinking about the logic, but also there is a creativity touch. I want you guys to use both of them and never your emotions. Thank you for your attention. That's it in terms of the presentation. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. This is basically decision making, and this is basically problem solving. Let me display again. This is basically on the decision making. This is basically on the problem solving. These are some of the approach that I shared with you. There are way much more approach that hopefully when I'm back to Tunisia, or maybe like we can address one by one when I'm back to Tunisia to discuss how to take decisions, how to solve a problem. But I hope that you guys find this insightful. I'm going to be checking if there are any questions. So again, few main highlights from this presentation is, first of all, I want you to make sure, guys, whenever you are brainstorming about a problem and you want to find a solution, I want you to write down to write down your problem, to write down your possible solutions, to write down your whys, write them down. Don't keep everything in your mind, but write them down, ink on paper, okay? Use crowd, use other people that they know. I want you also to try to use as many tools as possible. There is a decision tree, it can help. And most importantly, you have to use the logic and creativity and never your emotions. Take your time on making decisions. Never make decisions where emotions are high. Whenever there is a problem, there is an issue, I know that sometimes the problem hits you and it makes you so stressful, so upset, and then you make a decision right away. This is the worst that can happen. Do not take your time. There is something that I really learned and that I really like is that whenever I'm upset about something, like not only a problem, but anything, right? I never talk right away and I never make a decision right away. I like take my time, I cool down, and after that I make a decision. And after that I try to solve a problem. This is something I really recommend, and that's what I mentioned by taking your time, but also use your logic and creativity, never your emotions. Let's see, we have a few questions. Yeah, thank you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the training. Linvocacy. Do you think people use bias when they don't know anything about the topic, like the lack of information? So can you share your name, Limvoca? Unless this is your name. So Chris, okay, perfect. So basically, yes, sometimes when there is a lack of information, people they have a tendency to use the bias. And this is something, I'm sorry for the word, so awful, because this is so selfish, and this might be harmful for others, right? So this is why, and this is what makes the difference between, like, maybe in the context that I spoke about it, it's more like boss and staff. And let me say that, and this is for me, for example, what makes difference between like a boss and a leader, or a boss and a manager, right? Because sometimes people they I don't want to say lazy, but they avoid asking questions, they avoid like having information, and then they use their bias to make a decision. And it's true, like some people that they use the bias just because they do not have information. And that's why I always recommend that you guys try to ask questions. That's why I recommend that you use your mind side, not your eyesight, so you can make the best decision ever. And that's why, as I said, you have to be aware of the bias. We all have biases, that's for sure. We all have some specific preconceived notion about something specific. It's important that you have to be aware of, so later, when you make a decision, just also consider that awareness of the bias, so you can eliminate it and you can make like an informative decision. One of my friends said that society itself benefits when we can extract its max value out of the most able people. Can anyone can be critical thinker? Why? Because there are people with really high IQ, their ability to bring great solutions are really higher than those with lower IQ. So I honestly don't think critical thinking it's about IQ. Because I personally believe that, and this is my point of view, of course, especially when it comes to intellectual skills, I do not want to call them soft skills because I don't like the word soft skills. But I want to call them intellectual skills. They are something that we learn. Critical thinking also the same. And if you see, critical thinking, as I shared, is basically a way of thinking where you use questions, analysis, interpretation, and like a judgment, a common judgment. So all these four, you don't need. You don't. You were not born having these four traits. Matter of fact, these four traits, there are tools, practical tools that you can use that can help you to apply them. In other words, sometimes someone who has never been a critical thinker, who has been a normal thinker, can use the tools for asking questions, the tools for interpretation, the tools of analysis, and the tools of like, asking what's the value, where he or she can share ideas and put question and write down on these tools and use the tools, and he will come up with the creative solutions, right? So it's a matter of practice, but also it's more of a practical skills because you can use a practical tools. So even with someone who has a high IQ, it's amazing, but someone with a low IQ, and then I give him or her the tools to ask the appropriate questions, to do the analysis, to do the interpretation, to see what are the values, they will be doing a great job, probably even better than the person with a high IQ. Sometimes the high IQ, they can, critical thinker without using the tools, writing around, without writing things down, it's fine. But as I mentioned, even someone with low IQ, even someone who never was a critical thinker before, by using the tool, you can still do a great job in terms of, making the right decision. An example we all may understand, in some countries being homosexual is against nature, but some others countries find it absolutely normal. Do the notion of problems depends on the point of view? Oh my God, this is a tough question, but thank you for asking this. Do the notion of problems depends on the point of view? I would say yes. It's also like depends on point of view, but this is again, it's more, as I mentioned, the presentation is more in a professional context. But probably I think that it's a point of view more because this specific topic, it's more, as in there is at certain point I mentioned you have to look at the whole system. So that's when you said like, specific countries, because specific countries we're talking about whole system, right? So if this is specific problem, you have a specific problem of being homosexual, but you have to look at the whole system, how it's functioning. So you will understand the core problem where people, are accepting or not accepting this. So it's matter of whole system. And this is one of the topics where you need to look at the whole system to understand the root cause and then to address the root cause. I hope that I answered your question. Logic and creativity, never your emotion. Is not our creativity linked to our emotions? Well, creativity is linked to our emotions, but there are many different emotions, Chris. There are the emotions that makes you excited. There are the emotions that make you upset. There are the emotions that can be a barrier toward making the right decisions. There are the emotions that can be a barrier regarding, like writing the same things, you know. Stress is always considered as an emotion. So yes, creativity is linked to our emotions, but here the emotions that I was talking about it is more the emotions when they are running high, the emotions where you are upset, when you are angry. I don't want to call them the negative emotions, but the emotions that can be, because excitement, for example, cannot play a barrier toward your decision making. Even when you are excited, I also would recommend that you take your time in making decisions. But there are other emotions that probably will hold you back from making the right decisions. Other emotions will boost your creativity. That I completely agree. So, yes, I'm not against you. Creativity is definitely linked to our emotions. But here I'm talking specifically of the emotions that will hold you back from making the right decisions. Of course, anytime. Um, that's it. Unless you guys have any further questions, it was really great to be with you today. And yeah, if you have any questions, please drop a message. Let me check. Maybe there are questions. Uh, no, no questions. Okay. Thank you again. It was really great to be with you. And yeah, hopefully I get to see you next week. Again, there is, as I mentioned previously, there is something really important is that we are soon going to be having um, these trainings and these workshops in person in the American Corner. Hopefully, it will be on Saturdays, maybe Saturday mornings or Saturday afternoons. And hopefully, I get to meet all of you. Tunis and Sus, I know some of you might be living far away from these locations, but I would love to get to see all of you. And yeah, hopefully that you enjoyed this presentation. And see you soon, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.